the more you scale up with more properties, the more you need more help. And you have to be available almost 24/7 for any kind of inquiry, especially if it's an international property, of course, too. You scale up, you need more people or more time. The management style, though, I would say no matter what you're doing, self-management or you have a management company or you're co-hosting, it has to be personal.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 402.
Welcome to the Management Styles for Short-Term Rentals panel. What management style is best suited for your short-term rentals? Should you handle managing yourself, or is third party a better option for you? And how do you know if you're making the right choice? We have a great group with us here today to help answer those questions, starting with Tony Stancato. I'm going out of order here, but Tony in the middle. Tony is an emerging industry leader with a personal portfolio of 4 short-term rental properties totaling 11 doors and a successful vacation rental management company called Book and Gather. Tony has a wealth of knowledge and experience to share with us today, and he's also the co-host of the popular Michigan Short-Term Rentals podcast and a short-term rental real estate agent as well. Nate DePelsMaeker is a field sales executive for Vacasa. Is it Vacasa? Vacasa.
Yeah.
And he is a licensed real estate salesperson who uses his background in both short-term rental management and professional sales to assist homeowners in deciding for or against full-service third-party management solutions for their vacation rental homes. Brenden Stark's comprehensive connection to West Michigan makes him an unparalleled matchmaker between buyer and seller in the short-term rental space. Brenden is the owner of Stark Vacation Rentals and specializes in creating beautiful spaces for a quick escape or long vacation getaway. All right, thanks for being here today, guys.
Absolutely.
Tony, let's start with you. I mean, when we talk about management styles for short-term rentals, what are we really talking about? What are the different management styles?
Yeah, I would say self-management. So you're managing it all yourself, or property management like a company like Vacasa or Book and Gather. And you could also be a co-host. That's a popular thing where technically the homeowner will still be a host and then they'll bring on somebody to help co-host. And then I think there's also like managing locally and managing afar. We just actually started managing a property down in Florida, so I do think there's a little bit of some nuances with managing at a distance and even across different states.
And guys, feel free to jump in and add to that too. Brenden, I know you had some more to add to that question.
Absolutely. I think it really depends on how much time you have in life. Really, there's no definitive one answer on the best management styles, but if you're working an 8 to 5 and you're working a normal career and you don't have time to manage it, I mean, vacation rentals there's a lot involved in them other than like a normal multi-unit property. So more on that later. But I agree exactly what Tony said. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can co-host, you can manage yourself, you can hire a management company, so there's a lot of options.
And Nate, you're here representing Vacasa. Talk about that management style and why people might make that choice, because I'm assuming Vacasa is a third-party management solution.
Yeah, so Vacasa, we brand ourselves as full service. So we basically do everything around the short-term rental operation outside of exteriors, so lawn care, snow removal. So basically, like these guys already said, I mean, there's so many different ways to manage a property now, whether it's just partnering up with somebody or just creating a good relationship with a cleaner and then handling the rest on your own. When it comes to the time to basically step away from that and focus your time on something else, that's when you would bring in someone in the full service realm.
Tony, to talk about how you started your portfolio. Were you self-managing, and how was that for you?
Yeah, so we started out self-managing. We actually started out like a lot of people where it was, hey, we were looking to pick up a property in Tennessee, primarily Gatlinburg or Florida, and it was just hard to make the numbers work in those areas for us. So we said, hey, let's figure it out here in our backyard. So we started looking at inland lakes, and then just ran into a lot of restrictions and made it difficult to find one there. And then my wife, who's actually here, set a property over in a small town, population 10,000, ran the numbers. We run the numbers through AirDNA, and purchase price to the projected revenue was just phenomenal. So we decided to go forward with that. And yeah, started out self-managing, did it all on our own. And then, we picked up another one and then started picking up some property management clients. And then that's when we kind of went full steam ahead with the property management company. And that's kind of when I left my career.
So you're all in on short-term rental and your portfolio and managing the short-term rentals.
Absolutely. And primarily in Southwest Michigan, just seems to be a very, very hot spot for travelers, primarily from Chicago. So I know when we started, we thought, hey, if we could get $500 a night in this place, and again, it's nothing fancy, 1930s, farmhouse. And if we could get $500 a night, we'd be to the moon. And our first booking came in at $1,000 a night. And so we were just floored, and then it only continued to get better as time went on. So that's when we knew that was kind of the area that we really wanted to be in. And
yeah, I'm going to stick with you for a few questions here, Tony, and then we'll make sure everyone has equal time. But you looked at AirDNA, which gives you like good metrics on what you can expect. How accurate did you find AirDNA to be?
Well, the good thing is it was inaccurate on the low side. So it projected, I think, just under 90,000 for the year. And last year, that property did 115.
Okay, so it was
good.
It gave you a good number to start with, but
yeah.
we actually exceeded that number.
Yeah.
And what is it? You said $1,000 a night. I mean, that's a staggering amount. What is it about your property that warrants $1,000 a night?
Yeah, so we actually just did a podcast on this for the Michigan Short-Term Rentals podcast, and we were talking about what is it? Again, it's not this fancy luxury house. It's not on the water. It's probably 10 minutes to the closest beach. And when we really started looking at it, like, what is it about this? It is on 2.5 acres, so there's some privacy, and it's kind of got this cool feel of being secluded. But what we determined was it's got to be the amenity stack, right? We have what we say is probably one of the coolest fire pits in all of Michigan. We have huge, carved bear structures on the property. So it's not your average fire pit, right? And it's the Instagram world right now where I'm sure lots of cool pictures are taken with that. But then in addition to that, we have the hot tub and then a sauna. So it's kind of that stack of those three amenities. We don't think any one of those amenities would kind of be the big driver by themselves. It's the combination of those three that kind of create the perfect formula for that.
Great. Thank you. Brenden, let's talk about you and your entree into the short-term rental space and kind of your philosophy on management and how that's sort of shifted over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been investing for about, I'd say, 6-7 years, and I started out with basically a 4-unit. And then I did a couple flips, and then I did multi-units, and I would buy old houses and renovate them and turn them into 2 units, 3 units, whatever the city would allow, because Grand Rapids is kind of strict on what you can do. So I'm sure you guys know that. So then I had heard about vacation rentals about 5 years ago, and I got my first one in Saugatuck, Michigan, downtown. So it's a condo downtown right by the water, and we have a boat rental with it too. More on that later. It's kind of a great way to add revenue to your vacation rentals. So that was the first one I bought, and then that was doing well. And that one also is a property, like he was saying, that we gross over $100K a year on. It's right downtown. It's just Saugatuck is a great area. Southwest Michigan's one great area in Michigan to have short-term rentals, but there's others. So Traverse City is another good area. They're very restrictive. You might have heard I spoke out in the last meeting, and every city has their own rules and regulations, and they're all kind of different. But so we bought a lake house on Spider Lake, And then we incorporated a boat rental with it. I'm going to move this up because I'm like bending over here. So we incorporated a boat rental with that too. And that property is doing extremely well. And so in the third one, we decided to do international. So we bought a place in Tulum, Mexico. And it's going to be done in August. It's a new development in the Amira district, right by the water. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then me and my business partner, James, who's out there, we formed a company called Vacationy, and we are a vacation rental management company. We have clients throughout Michigan. So that's kind of how I came to be. And I am a full-time realtor as well, just like this guy. And I help people buy and sell vacation rentals.
So you Brenden, you kind of glossed over the second part of your business here.
I'm sorry.
Wait, no, let me point out. So you got into the vacation rentals in Southwest Michigan. You mentioned out of the country rental that you have, but then you said you started a vacation rental management company as well.
Correct.
What was that thought process like to say, okay, well, we're doing it successfully for ourselves. Let's start managing for other people. Like from a management perspective, why did you take that on?
Well, I guess one of the biggest things is it's a difficult kind of property asset. You know, it's long term is you get it going. I mean, there's difficulties with long term rentals as well, but there's so much more involved, and being as personable as possible is extremely important because you have to be able to respond to guests very quickly, inquiries, booking, greeting messages, everything, and it's daunting for just one person to do it if you have multiple properties and you continue to grow. So we decided that we would form a company to be able to manage these properties more efficiently. I mean, I manage some of my own, and our company manages other ones. But the more you scale up with more properties, the more you need more help. And you have to be available almost 24/7 for any kind of inquiry, especially if it's an international property, of course, too. You scale up, you need more people or more time. The management style, though, I would say no matter what you're doing, self-management or you have a management company or you're co-hosting, it has to be personal. You have to put your personal touches on there. You have to respond to people right away. And that's why people like short-term rentals is because they're renting from an owner. You're a person, not an entity or a corporation. And you have to wait 10 minutes on a call for someone to respond to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes great sense. And what's striking me about what you're saying is that even if you are self-managing, at some point, if you're going to scale and bring on more properties, you almost have to become more of a professional manager because now you have to bring on a team to help you with all those different properties. So that transition there is what's very interesting. I mean, at what point did you realize, hey, it's not just me anymore with my startup properties, but now I'm going to bring on more people on my team and expand my portfolio?
Just more inquiries, more people that wanted to work with us, and then I found an excellent partner, to be honest with you, who has a lot of skill sets. That we have different skill sets, so it made sense to scale up, and there was really no other way for me. You know, it made sense, and it's working out well so far. So
it was fate.
Yeah, sort of. Would you call it fate, James? Serendipitous, fair enough.
All right, Nate, let's talk with you. So I know that you're here. You know, Vacasa is a third-party management company, so you're going to talk about that. But let's start with this. Why would people just start right away with Vacasa or a third-party management as opposed to run their own short-term rentals for a while?
Yeah, so the people that I run into that actually jump right on board with us right away and not manage themselves or not look into any other option, it's typically, like Tony mentioned, somebody that's in Chicago, they have a place in Southwest Michigan, and they want to use it for family and friends a few times or a few weeks a year, whatever it be, and they just really don't have any interest in doing the operational side of it. Maybe they've Googled a little bit about it, thought about doing it, and then realized that, like you mentioned, it is like a 24/7 job, basically. You might not actually be running around doing things operationally, but you do need to be available to answer that call when it comes through. So those types of people, I'd say, are the perfect fit for a full service model. And then people that are a little bit more curious about getting involved and kind of wanting to learn the process before they scale up and get that second or third property, I'd say it is a good idea to get involved a little bit with it yourself on the front end.
The type of person you just mentioned who has like a summer home and they want to rent it out, and they would bring in a Vacasa or a third-party management. Do they also then have the mindset, well, hey, maybe I should get more, or is it usually just a one-off, or maybe they have two that they want managed?
Yeah. That's a great question. We actually have opened up people's minds to being an investor when really they were just looking for a second home. So to answer your question, yes, we do run into people where they get going with us, the return's good, they're happy, they can use their property when they want to. It makes sense for them to get a different one. So I'm working with a few different investors that do have multiple properties. Some even have 5 or 6 with us. Some all in Michigan and some spread across the world even. So, I mean, it's definitely something that is lucrative and you can change and pivot. But when you have that full service management style, then you're not really having to do anything but take that mailbox money in.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is health care for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB & Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com.
And there's got to be a different mindset between those who want to manage their own rental properties and those who would just go straight to third party. Do you have to find that maybe there's a little bit of therapy involved in bringing people into a third party management system?
Yeah. So I know a lot of you guys out there are probably self-managers or looking at solutions, maybe even to get out of that side of things. But to your point there, I do have a lot of conversations with homeowners that do just kind of end in us parting ways because they do want to have some of that control over their rental, and they do want to, be able to save that X percentage off their income in order to, maybe head over there every once in a while and double check on things. So some people, it does make sense just to kind of stay in the realm or do one of these hybrid models that we've talked about. But as far as full service goes, I mean, it's somebody that definitely wants to be hands off and just kind of collect that money and then continue that relationship with Vacasa as their local boots on the ground, kind of more of a property caretaker in that realm.
Yeah, and as a third-party management company, what are some of the sticky issues you have with your owners? Like, what are some of the tension points that you might have?
Guest screening, anybody? Yeah. No, that's definitely one of the biggest ones I run into is, especially with it, like I mentioned, most of the people that work with us, people that want to be hands-off, but they care about the property. They bought it because they want to use it for themselves. It's a big investment. And it might be their only property outside of their actual home. So it's almost even more important for them that it's taken care of than, an investor that might have 6, 7, 8 properties, and they just kind of look at it as another door in their portfolio.
Okay, quick question for each of you. If you do start off with 1 or 2 properties and you're self-managing, at what number should you consider either going professional and starting your own management company, like you two did, or hiring a third-party management company? What's that threshold number of rental properties that you should have?
Yeah, I would say it kind of goes back to your own individual circumstances, right? For me, we had one that was fully operational. We were bringing on a second one of our own, and then we were onboarding 2 client properties. And that was the time where I kind of met max capacity. I was using vacation time to go set those up, and then at work I would be getting calls or having to coordinate something. So it just wasn't fair to be taking those calls at work, right? So that was when I decided to go ahead and do it full time. But for me, again, working full time, family, I have 3 young sons, and then that was that threshold for me.
Yeah, I would kind of piggyback on what you're saying. There's really no definitive answer. It really depends on your circumstances in life. If you're working full time, you have a career, you won't have the time to respond to people every day, all day, constantly. If there's problems, check-ins, and there's always there's guest problems, as you know. People don't follow the rules sometimes. I would say 90% of my guests are great, and then I have a zinger, right? So where they smoke inside everywhere, and then the next guests are allergic to smoke, so I gotta get an ozonator in there immediately and things like that. So it really depends on you. When I started, I was working in corporate America and just moonlighting, and at night I would look for properties and try to invest in what I could and learn as much as I could. I got on bigger pockets. So really it's up to you, and also it depends how much control do you want to have over your property? How personal do you want to be? Do you trust another company to handle your interactions? And there are good management companies that do that and make it personal, and it will include you and co-host with you. So really, it's really up to you. There's no set number. When we got Mexico, we're going to manage it, but we're going to also co-manage it because we're not there. It's Tulum, Mexico. It's a different culture. It's different languages. There's people, different. So it's a whole different animal. So that's what I would say on that.
Nate, what's your number threshold?
I would have to just mirror them and say that there's really not a number. It is very persona based. I think the biggest question that I typically ask people when they're looking at this is, what are your goals with the property? If their goals are, to stay personal with it, like you mentioned, and, provide that extra touch or those extra amenities, in order to do that and make sure that it's actually happening, you do have to have some sort of foot in the play. So if you're just an investor and you're working in the corporate world and you're looking for that next one, then I think getting involved as early as the first one isn't even always the wrong thing to do. So again, I think it just really goes toward what your goals are and how quickly you want to grow your business, if that's what you're trying to do.
I want to dig into the co-hosting model of management, because I'm personally unclear as to what exactly that means. So Tony, do you want to take that to start?
Yeah, so Brenden would have a property, and then he would ask me to be added as a co-host for him, and then essentially maybe he is working, and then I know it's my responsibility while he's at work that I'm actually going to be managing the guest communication and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a shared responsibility under the owner's listing, and just again to kind of help get people in to help you out on that side. So that's one way. If you are working full time and you want to manage it yourself, but you also know you need a little bit of help, that's a great option. And sometimes it can be a little more cost effective than the full management style. So definitely something worth exploring. And
is that co-hosting? Are you going to a third-party manager and just saying, look, I don't want your full-on services, but I do want you to co-host with me? Or are you just, because I'm not sure what that arrangement is between the two hosts.
Yeah, you can do it that way, or me and Brenden could be friends, and I could say, hey, it's my property. For 10% of the revenue, would you mind handling the guest communication? Maybe it's on the weekends or during the weekday from 8 to 5. So there's a couple different ways you could do it. But yeah, you can definitely reach out to other management companies. We are a co-host actually for a property down in Florida. So there's also some rules for some properties, right? The one we're co-hosting, they're not allowed to have a full service management on that. So he's very busy with what he does, so we're able to take some of that guest communication and handle that for him.
Great, thank you. I want to dig into the pros and cons of self-management. And Brenden, we'll start with you. What are some of the mistakes that people who self-manage make? And did you make any of those mistakes when you started out?
Of course I did. You learn from mistakes, right? So one of the biggest things is the response rate. You need to respond immediately. The way VRBO and Airbnb, I'll just use those two for example. It's like an algorithm, right? Like a Google Analytics algorithm kind of thing, where they rate you on 6 different things. One is communication, one is reviews, one is how many bookings you get, and such and so forth, right? So you have to make sure that you can meet all of those. So it's really important that you focus and be able to do that. If you don't have time to do that, you're going to lose your. See, the most important thing is the 5-star reviews. I'll just cut to the chase. If you have 5-star reviews, you're going to. People read reviews. It's important to them. They want to know it's other people have been there and they like it and it's good. So you want to maintain as many 5-star reviews as possible. So as long as if you can do that, then that's you can communicate right away. That's one factor. Another factor is some of the other mistakes I made is you need good photography. You need professional photography. 100%, no doubt about it. You need to make it a special, interesting, fun, cool place. And Tony has done that with his. He was explaining like the carved bear, was it?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Let's be honest. I mean, we offer like boat rentals as an addition, and we offer like big TVs, cable TV, anything you can make to make it fun. Games, cornhole. We even have like a NES emulator, like a Nintendo emulator, and a Super Nintendo one in the other property. You wouldn't be surprised how many people say, "Oh my gosh, I spent 3 hours playing Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!" With my 10-year-old child. That's people love that stuff, and making it a fun, interesting experience. If you have the time to do that, and also there are going to be problems, right? So I just had. This is a fun surprise. I went up for a ski trip with my friends. Short-term rentals are great too because you can use them for yourself, right? The intrinsic value is amazing. So I went up to a ski trip and I got up there. There was like the water was dripping and that's it. Like we couldn't take showers and I'm like, oh great, pipes are frozen. Nope, actually the pump in the well went out, right? So I was up there for 2 days trying to find someone who could fix that for me and replace the pump. I didn't know it was that, so I had to call a plumber. So anyways, there's a million different things that can happen, and you have to be able to handle those things right away, especially if you have guests coming and then your pump goes out and they don't have water. They're not going to stay there. They're going to leave. And that's, so that's all I would say.
That just happened to me this weekend.
Fun.
I stayed at a VRBO and the pump went out and we had no water, so we left.
Yep. See, there you go.
Tony, let's go to you. Let's talk about mistakes that people who self-manage make and possibly some mistakes that you might have made.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys are in some of those Facebook groups for short-term rentals, but I think the biggest mistake I see people make is they seem entitled and that the guests are lucky that they get to use the property. And I think that's a little bit backwards. So not keeping in there, hey, I'm going to charge them for this, I'm going to charge them for this, how much should I charge them for that? And it's like, that's not the guest experience. So I would say that would probably be the number one mistake you can make is not really keeping the guest's best interests in mind and being very flexible. And it's like small things are going to happen, right? So it's like, what are you going to do? What's your plan for when things happen? So for us, if something happens, even the small things, it's like, hey, we're gonna send them like $30 and say, hey, this is for donuts, on us. And they're like, oh, you don't have to do that. I mean, even for some of the smallest things. So how can we show up in a way that they weren't expecting and that a lot of other hosts don't do? So that would be the number one mistake I see people making is just kind of having that entitlement attitude as a host and not keeping the guest's best interests in mind.
I agree with that too, 100%.
Yeah. Nate, a slightly different spin on that question. When you take over properties that have been self-managed, what are some of the problems that you're fixing?
I'd say a lot of process-oriented stuff. Some people are really good at paying attention, keeping up with the industry, making changes as needed. Other people are still kind of rocking and rolling with that 90s or early 2000s vacation home rental style of, here's the key, come and get it, and let us know if you need firewood here and there type of thing, So sometimes when we take over for a self-manager, sometimes, at least for our perspective, they're almost a little too involved. And then Also, on the process side of things, there are so many different things that you can put in place. I mean, if you just walk around the vendor booths today and have some conversations, you guys will learn a lot. But there's so many things you can put in place nowadays that'll just make your life easier as a host. And those are the types of things that we're typically having to go through and fix. You know, put electronic locks on doors. If they're offering extra amenities or like rental bikes or kayaks or anything like that, we'll typically put in some sort of locking mechanism on those so that they can't come up missing and things like that. So I'd say it comes down to a lot of the process-oriented type of things that we're having to go back and fix that you guys as self-managers, if you keep up with the times and pay attention to the vendors and all the new technologies that's coming out, and there's a lot of things that can make your life easier out there.
Yeah, and I would definitely say design and decor is super important, and a lot of people think that they're really good at it, and they're not. So make sure you at least get a consultation after you're done, or at least before the project starts. Get some ideas, have them help you, because we've seen it where people, the homeowner will want to do it all themselves, and it falls flat, misses the mark. So just really important, get some professional eyes on it. It's worth all of the $250 or $300, $400 that they charge you. Make sure you do that.
I'll just say a random thing. He's absolutely right. The way you design it is the experience, right? Hire a professional, or if you have a friend who does it, or a spouse, or anybody. But people, this is wild. I don't understand how anybody would ever do this, but people will redesign your place and move decorations around while they're there. And it just boggles my mind, but plan on that happening. That happened to you, right? Yeah. Fun, isn't it? I don't get that one. So.
And make sure you have fun stuff to do, for sure. There's no reason. I made a list of this is what $1,000 will get you, and it's like 20 items, and they're fun. So you don't have to break the bank to do that, but there's really no reason you should have nothing fun in your property. So make sure you do that. Otherwise, let's say you're a one bed, one bath with nothing fun to do on site. You're competing with a hotel at that point, right? So make sure you have the amenities, get the amenity stack. I mean, the bigger you can go on amenities, the better it's going to be for you. And like one thing I'm really bullish on right now that we haven't incorporated, and it's pickleball. Like if you can get a pickleball court on your acreage, right? If you can get one on there, then I think there's a lot of people. I do some SEO type stuff. There's people searching Airbnb with pickleball. Nobody else has pickleball right now, so I think it could go a long ways. But that's going to set you apart from everybody else.
Can I say one more thing quick? Also good appliances. That makes a big difference. People want to go and stay in an Airbnb where not only is the water pressure good, which is hard with wells sometimes, whoever has a well, you know that, but good appliances are really important. So make sure that you keep up on those,
So I love that you guys are sharing best practices here, and I think a lot of gold you're sharing as far as what you should have or should consider. What are just some of the things that you are in the opposite direction that you should not have at a short-term rental that you still see people doing?
I would say just anything personalized or any clutter that really just does not have a use to the guest. Too many people, to my point earlier, where we manage a lot of people's second homes, too many people just leave them as their second homes, leave the pictures of grandma and grandma up on the wall, things like that. So if you can take those down, take the monograms down, things like that, and to their point, make the design hit home. People don't want to vacation to a place that feels like their place back home. They want to go somewhere that is fun, has the added amenities and things like that. If you have a garage space that you're not using, I always tell people throw a foosball table in there, dartboard, little bar top table, whatever it be. Those are the types of things that are getting the bookings when other homes aren't.
I know some of you are going to disagree with this, but anything that can break down that's like a hot tub, I mean, they're great. People love them, but if they don't shock them right after and they have like 10 people and they're in that thing all weekend long, it's a swamp. by the end of the weekend, So, and then you have to drain the hot tub and you have to shock it. And so anything like that. I mean, I do offer the boat rentals with my properties too. And you'd be surprised how many people do not understand how to operate a pontoon boat, which is fine, but lots of questions. So whatever you have in your property that is going to, that not everybody can figure out immediately and will call you, even like your TV, if it's complicated, have instructions, whatever. But that, and just make sure there's no fireworks in the property. Somebody left fireworks at my property in Traverse City and shot them off and pissed off my neighbors. And I didn't hear about it. I heard it for a month after that. I heard from it. So I just tell people no fireworks, no parties, no illegal substances, and they're still going to do it occasionally, but that's what I would say,
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just from a cleaning aspect, you want to make sure that it's cleaned appropriately, that your cleaning team is strong, or if you're doing the cleaning, that you're making sure that obviously anything from prior guests is something that you don't want left for the next guest. I know a lot of people like to leave alcohol or a bottle of wine for their guests. I'm not a huge fan of that, and I think it might be against terms of service for Airbnb, so that would just be something to double check, and I would probably caution against.
All right, thank you. So I do want to open it up for Q&A. Does anybody have a question that they want to ask right now? There we go. Perfect. And I will bring you the microphone, and you must speak into it.
Thank you. This is for Brenden. I was so excited to hear that you have Saugatuck properties. We have 2 there, fairly new, added to our portfolio, and previously had lakefront homes and rented boats.
Yeah.
So my question is about your boat rental. Do you do that personally? Do you go through Boat Setter? And how do you work it in Saugatuck?
Yep, that's a good question. So when you do a boat rental in Michigan, the laws are kind of screwy, right? So if you have a vacation rental property, you can have a boat there and you can rent it out without any kind of permit, right? If you have a property and you have a boat rental and it's not on your property, you have to have a navigational pilot's license to operate it, and you have to have a livery license just to have it, right? So make sure you get that. But in Saugatuck, it's $1 million to have a property on water there, because there's so few. So we have a condo, right? And then we rent a slip from the city. And there's a lottery each year. And we just got we got it because it's only $2,000 a year for that. Otherwise, you can rent a slip from someone there, but that you're looking $4, $5, $6, $7, $8,000 a year for that, and hard to monetize a business when you're paying $8,000 for a slip. So what I would suggest, if you want to do that, you won't be able to get the city slips, but there are some that are available. Harbor, like Tower Harbor, offers that. But what I do get my boat. I have a website, rentalwatercraft.com, and it's a boat rental business. And I use that third party to get my boat, and I also personally advertise throughout the city. I put brochures and pamphlets up, and then I also, each guest, I message them and say, "Are you interested in a boat rental? I'll discount it. I'll keep it for your stay, but you got to reserve it." Mm-hmm. So, but now Traverse City's different because we're on the water, so we don't have to have a livery license. We're not like taking people around, so we don't have to have a navigational pilot's license, So does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Our condo is also on the water, and we have a boat slip.
Sweet.
With our condo. So yeah, I'll get with you, I think, after we're done here, and maybe pick your brain a little bit. But
yep. There's
definitely interested in what you know about it.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. I can share what I learned the hard way. So.
I'll come to you in a second. Brenden, what's the economics of actually renting out a boat? Like with the cost of the licenses, the boat slip and all that, how do you offset that by charging for the boat?
Sure. So, for example, in Traverse City, we with June, July, and August, we include a boat rental. And when I say a pontoon boat, I'm talking $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 pontoon that's 20 years old, but operates well with a 30 horsepower engine, right? Something like that. And because those are not terribly expensive, right? And we charge $850 to $1,000 a night, 7-day minimum, June through the end of August, right? And it rents out and books every year. So we can charge $400 or $500 more a night because we have a $5,000 pontoon boat.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's awesome.
One more thing I'd say, we had an engine go out, so we ended up buying another one that was around the same price range because it was about $15,000 to $20,000 just to buy a motor. So yeah, it's crazy.
So it makes a lot of sense then to have that boat.
So yes, to answer your question, it does. It monetizes well, and then in Saugatuck, it's a separate business. So but it does make sense and it does profit well.
That's great.
So, yeah.
You guys doing? Thanks for coming out today. Appreciate all of you. My name's Josh. I have a few rental properties here in the city of Grand Rapids, all long term, and I'm building my first Airbnb on Spring Lake. And I wanted to ask a question about pets. I know it's a long term. It's a little bit different. I think the latest statistic was like 75% of renters have a pet. And personally, I like my dog more than most of my family and friends. So, but short term is different. So, and we have a lot of bad pet owners out there. So, I was wondering what you guys do.
So on the ones that we own, we don't allow pets, but for some of the properties that we manage, they have pets and they allow them. I think it's a double-edged sword, right? So for me, we don't have any pets either. So then when we're traveling, we're not necessarily looking to stay in a property that has pets. So I think there can be some, you can deter some people from renting it. You might be able to get some extra cleaning fees or pet fees for that. But we try to avoid it for the ones that we own. And just primarily, people picking up after their dog in the yard, just easier not to do it, in my opinion.
I would agree with Tony on that for the most part. I think it also comes down to a little bit of a persona thing again. Like, if you're a pet owner and you're actually the one managing the property and you want to allow pets, and you're the one that's cleaning up after them, then sure, if you're making that extra $30-$40 off of the pet fee. But if you're hiring a cleaning crew and they're the ones that you're holding accountable to making sure that the property's good to go after the pet's been there, and then there's an issue that pops up and you are a co-host, then that does come back to you. So you have to start thinking about those types of things that might cause nuances if you're not necessarily the one that's in control of everything that's happening operationally.
Go ahead. Oh, and I was going to say, and just because you say no pets doesn't mean that pets aren't going to show up. So
yes.
It only took us about 3 weeks to figure that out. So if people last minute, we don't make a big deal out of it. If someone shows up with their pet, usually they'll say, hey, we got emotional support animal. And like we had someone pull in the driveway and just say, hey, I forgot to mention that I'm bringing my dog. Well, at that point, it's a little late to actually turn them away. And so we're not going to charge extra fees or anything like that. And over the holidays, we had someone, they said, hey, the pet boarding person, they actually canceled and we can't get our dog in there. Would you accommodate it this one time? And, we'll make exceptions for that and just try to add that extra personal touch and, from a customer service standpoint. But yeah, we try to say no on the front end and then, we might take them at a certain point. We don't typically upcharge. If somebody says like, hey, bring in the emotional support animal, and that's probably 3 out of 4. We'll just let it go. And then like the one over the holidays, they said, hey, we'd be willing to pay. And if you're willing to pay, we'll accommodate.
So we have a little different spin on that. We allow pets on all our properties, and we have found that we get a lot more bookings because of it. But we have rules, right? So with one of our clients that we manage, me and James with Vacationy, it's like a renovated dairy farm, and it's in Byron Center, and it does really well, because some of those properties don't necessarily have to be on water, or they don't have to be in Traverse City or Saugatuck or in a vacation area. They can just be by a city, right? And it allows short-term rentals. Anyways, long story short, she bought 2 crates that stay there permanently, and they say if you leave the house, you have to crate your dog because we don't want them to destroy furniture, and we don't want hair everywhere, because dogs will misbehave when owners aren't around. So in our opinion, it's advantageous to allow pets because people are obsessed with their pets. So I like my dogs better than some of the people I know, right? Like same thing. So, but not really. But anyways, I would say allow them. We don't charge a pet fee. We just include that cost right into the rental at our rates. So.
I was going to just ask if each of you could kind of speak a little bit to how you guys handle and manage the financials with the hosts or owners, and not so much if you want to comment on, the fees you charge, but more of how the money flows, how it's accounted for, how it's handled to, kind of establish and maintain that trust and make sure everybody gets paid and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, for us, all the money comes in to a trust account and it's held there to the end of the month. And then first week of the month, we sit down with the bookkeeper and accountant and we run through all the financials, run through the expenses, make sure everything looks accurate. And then by the 15th of every month, we send out a statement. It'll have line by line kind of what the expenses, whether it's cleaning expense, maintenance expense, or maybe they needed some supplies. So it's all broken down for them. And if they have any questions, we're happy to jump on the phone. But it's pretty straightforward. Again, our fee comes off. They can see what our fee is. And yeah. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can roll.
Okay.
So for us, basically, of course, we have the large corporate structure behind it. So we have a big team that handles all the money that's coming in from all of the different platforms that we market out to. Our payments are at the end of each month to the homeowners. And then basically your way of getting transparency is through our homeowner app. So it's like a portal, just like online banking. You can log in, see the calendar, block it off for yourself whenever you need to, and then that's where your ledger would live. So you can see all of your stays and then things that we needed to spend on, things like that. So then you can just check and see how we're doing.
So we do it a little bit differently. What we do is we invoice our clients at the end of the month. So all the money that they make from their payout each, because you get paid out like within a day or two of when your stay happens, right? At the end of the month, we invoice our clients, and then they send us a check, and then we have a detailed invoice on what the room fees were and what the Airbnb fees taken out, and we don't charge for cleaning fees and such. So it's a little bit different. We believe in full transparency. We feel it's better just to have the money come to the owners, and then we invoice you later. So that's there's no right way to do it, but that's how we do it, and we think for us that's the right way. So
What software are you guys using to track all this?
So we use OwnerRes. I know they're here. I think I've seen them out in the lobby back in the corner. And then we use QuickBooks Online.
We have an internal process. I'm sure it's piecemealed together by a bunch of different programs, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure what that looks like.
yeah, we have a kind of a homegrown system with QuickBooks, and it's fairly simple. So that's how we do it.
Great.
Hey, good morning. My name is Brent, and I'm wondering what you do, what systems, processes that you put in place to mitigate risk, whether it's risk for personal injury, risk for damages, it could be anything. Thanks.
Before we even take on a property, we do have our local operations manager go out and inspect every property for any sort of safety issues. And that's even on top of municipalities that require a rental inspection. So sometimes those municipalities are just looking for their money on the rental permit. They come out, do the inspection, but then basically we come back through and do the double check with our eyes on it as a short-term rental, making sure that those little instances of an accident that could possibly happen are mitigated. And then from a standpoint of ongoing regulation, after each one of our guest stays, after each turn, like during each turnover, of course, we have a checklist where we're just making sure that things are still up to pace and things are looking good for the next guest that's coming in.
Yeah, similar to what he said, but also just insurance, right? The homeowner's going to make sure you have the proper insurance, make sure that they know that you're doing Airbnbs. Not all insurances are friendly with that. So if you haven't confirmed with your insurance agent that it's okay to do that, make sure you do that. And then so the homeowner will have insurance, and then the property manager, we have insurance that covers that as well. And then in addition to that, if you do the bookings through Airbnb or Vrbo, there's additional insurance through that. So Airbnb says that they have $1 million liability. I think they just bumped it up to $2 million liability. And then they also have a $1 million, I think, damage protection plan. And then Vrbo, we required the guests to actually purchase the add-on insurance through Vrbo, and that's been amazing. Like the times that we've had to use it, I mean, that one's super seamless. So, but I would say, like, everybody that I talk to, they're always, hey, they're going to destroy my house. And I would say, like, for us, the best pleasant surprise that we've had is the way that guests leave the property. So we've had a great history of just guests leaving it well. I remember opening the door, looked back at my wife, and I'm like, did the cleaners come? I had to check, and sure enough, they hadn't. But the guests have just been really good at taking care of the property as well.
Yep, I'm going to kind of add to that. I'm going to start with the property itself, because what I do is the first thing, obviously, when you have a rental property, insurance is going to go up because there's a higher risk. So I max out the liability for each property, and that's important. And I get a personal umbrella over everything. So this is for my personal properties, and then I suggest this to our clients always. Get an umbrella, at least $1 million, maybe $3 million, even better, depending on how many properties you have. And then put these in an LLC. So you have to be careful. They could call the mortgage, but that never really happens, right? I've never heard it happen to anybody. But if it's an LLC, you're sheltering yourself from liability, right? So, and then put that into a trust once that's there. So that's like 4 levels of, protection just for yourself for legally. That's not even a word. Vacation is not a word either, so whatever. so that's how we protect ourselves, like legal wise, right? Now we put an indemnification clause in the rental message with VRBO and Airbnb and say this is an implicit rental agreement. If you stay here, you're agreeing to do the following things, right? Just to make sure that they know this is serious, and then they're liable for any damage. And he's right. Like Airbnb and VRBO are nice because they have protection for if there's a problem. So the second stay I ever had up at Traverse City, a gentleman claimed that we didn't have a camera up there, and I'll get into that in a second, but he claimed that he fell and broke his ankle on our driveway, which is horrific, right? So I of course I believed him, but so he filed a claim on and he wanted to contact our insurance company, but it turns out Airbnb covered it. It was like a $25,000 bill. They just covered it. They said, we got you. And it took a little long time, but eventually they covered it, which is great because VRBO is great too. So it might take some time. So that's like as far as liability. As far as on the property, we have a camera out. You can't have a camera inside. That's creepy. But you can have a camera outside, right? So I have just a normal Google Home camera outside, and when people come, I can see how many people are parking. This is Traverse City, right? Because the other one's a condo. I can see how many people are parking because people always try to park in the neighbor's parking lot, try to bring cars. So I say, this is the max amount of cars you can bring. And so I look to make sure every time I have a stay that there's only 4 cars there, not 6 or 8 or 10. Someone brought 20 once and parked in 4 neighbors' yards, and they had a soccer party on a Sunday afternoon. So, of course, I got 10 calls from everybody, So you got to watch out for that stuff, And as far as just have good, strict rules to mitigate risk, and just... And if something happens, some people have noise sensors in their like units that just if it gets above a certain decibel amount, you'll get notified. You'll get a text on your phone. So those are a few ways to do that.
Just to drive that last point home that Brenden made, just setting expectations from the listing itself to reminders actually when they check into the property, just kind of reminding people of those rules and expectations along the way, I've found is just an easier way to handle it than, I didn't know I couldn't do that.
Yep. You'd be surprised what people think they can't do or don't know. So just, yeah.
Hey guys, my name is Austin. Thanks for doing this. This is pretty awesome, answering all these questions. My question is about cleaners specifically. Do you typically like kind of piece that together with a bunch of individual cleaners? Do you hire a company? How's it kind of the best way it works for you?
Start with that one. So it all depends on the client, right? So we with what we do, we offer 2 models, a co-hosting model, and then we offer a full management model, right? So for example, one of our clients, the one in Byron Center, that one, she lives in the building and she has a tenant, and the tenant cleans for her, and she handles some of the communications and the cleaning and the supplies, and that's why it's a co-host, because she does partial things, right? The other one, it's a river house. It's on the White River up in White Cloud, right? That one, it's full management. So when we have a full management client, we do everything for them. So I find out who the cleaners are in the area. I called 8 of them, and I found 2 that were really good. And then so I got 1, and I got a backup, right? So that's, if that makes sense. That's how it depends. So with my properties, I have good relationships with cleaners and contractors too. That I've reliable people. I had to get rid of a couple of them because sometimes you got to watch out with cleaning crews. Sometimes they start off and they do really well, and sometimes it's the owners, right? And then they start to delegate and grow, and then they hire people, and then the people they hire don't do as good a job as them, and because they don't care about the company as much. So I've had to get rid of a couple different cleaning companies because of that, and I don't like doing that, but I had to, right?
Yeah, so I'd say the best is to have a combination of both, right? So if you hire a company that has a cleaning staff that can kind of get the bookings that are out in advance, that's great. And then have one or two contractors that are flexible, and if something pops up last minute, I mean, they're a little bit easier to work with in terms of getting somebody over there in a timely manner. So for us, it's a combination of both, and yeah.
Yeah, I think these guys made great points. You need to have at least a backup, because that something will come up, something will get double booked, or someone will say, "Oh, I can't clean, sorry," and then all of a sudden you're driving out there trying to get a hold of a cleaner that's never been to your place or hasn't seen your checklist or whatever it be. But as far as Vacasa goes, we have a few housekeepers in each of our markets, and then basically we have professional relationships with contractors in our markets as well. So we rely pretty heavily on contracted work to get our cleanings done, but then if something comes up, our version of that backup is having somebody on staff that will be able to get it no matter what.
And the other thing we like to do is after each turn, have somebody else go through the property. 10 minutes, second set of eyes. You'll be shocked at, hey, what they find. So it's just like a lot of times there's a lot of pressure to get it turned over in time for the next guest. So we always try to make sure we have 10 minutes carved out at least for somebody that we call the inspector. So she'll go do all the properties after they're turned over. And just, again, the biggest part is like, hey, when they get there, what are they going to see? What's the experience like for them? So if it's dirty, something's left behind, it just doesn't leave a good first impression. So I think it's important to make sure that, hey, a second set of eyes goes through and takes a look at it too.
I'm going to say one more thing on that. He's absolutely right. Just trust but double check always, Trust but verify, because you just don't know. But one thing you can do if you're self-managing is there's an app called Breezeway, and that app is an accountability app for cleaning, and it works really well. So that's something to think about too. So write that down if you want. That basically they submit pictures, and my other cleaner who doesn't use that, I require her to send pictures of each room, just so I know it's done. I know what it looks like. So if there's complaints from the guests, I have proof to say, hey, like, this wasn't cleaned. Well, here's a picture showing it was. I got this picture today from my cleaner, right? Because people will argue and they never do anything wrong, So most guests, 95% of guests are great, but you get those 5%, and they're a doozy sometimes.
Okay, we have a few minutes left for as many questions as we can get in. So I want to do quick questions, quick answers. Let's get in as many questions as we can. Jeremy?
Quick fire. What is it that you're doing to increase revenue for other hosts or your clients?
So two things: dynamic pricing. Make sure you're using some type of dynamic pricing tool. Again, when we got into it, we thought, hey, $500 would be amazing. We weren't smart enough to know that we could get $1,650 a night. So we use software that helps set those prices for us. The one we use is Price Labs. And then the other thing that you could use is Rank Breeze. So if you're familiar with SEO, it's all about being on page one, right? So Rank Breeze is like an SEO tool for Airbnb, and it's going to say, hey, my property is listed on page 8 for 12 guests on July 4th, right? And so your job is to go in and make the tweaks that are necessary until you get up to page 1. And a lot of times that could be the title, that could be the cover photo, that could be the description, those types of things. So make sure you have those two tools, and that'll definitely help you increase revenue if you're not using it.
Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a bunch of things we do. One is that we offer off-season incentives, right? So February, you're not going to get 100% occupancy in February unless you're in Colorado, right? So what you do is you say, like, we'll book you you can book 3 days, but you get a day free, right? And that's revenue you wouldn't have gotten, right? Because it works. It does. And we cross-market properties too, as long as our guests allow it, right? So I have a person in Byron Center and I have a person up in White Cloud. they're not gonna have the same kind of guests because they're not gonna, so I say, by the way, we also have these other properties if you're interested, and people will book the other properties because if they like you as a host, they're gonna book them. So that's another thing. So that's one of the biggest things. We opened up to 1 day stays in off season, and 1 day stays are paying, but as long as you have the cleaning fee, they pay it. That's $150, $200, $200 that you wouldn't have had. And a lot of people travel for 1 day stays because they go to Saugatuck or Traverse City and they're there for business and they're out. So we always encourage those. And another big thing, and this is the last one, I know we have very, very limited time, is we have my business partner has a sort of a tech company, and we create websites for people, right? So personalized websites if they want that, with recommendations, with anything on there, the guides for the house and such. So that helps too, because then people can send that link to their guests and they can share it with their friends and family, and it links to VRBO and Airbnb. So there's a few things that we do.
I've just got 2 quick things to add to that. But one wasn't said, but probably goes without saying. Just make sure you're out there on all the major platforms. Use some sort of property management software. And then the second thing is, if you're going to offer added amenities that are kind of above and beyond, find a way to charge for those. And there's multiple different vendors here that would be able to help you out with that. So go ahead and make some conversations happen.
And I would guess the big thing for you would be the database, right? You guys probably have tons of emails and stuff that you can promote different properties in there. So that'd probably be one way that Vacasa would be able to help increase revenue.
This is Dan. What do you, for your full service management clients, so not the co-host where they participate, but what do you do to incentivize keeping your expenses managed and keeping the expenses low for your clients?
Go for it. I mean, really on a day-to-day, we don't have a ton of expenses. The biggest expense for us is going to be if something goes wrong, like if we have a plumbing issue. So the best thing is building out those relationships with those local vendors and get the ones that are going to give you a fair price and going to be responsive. But there are times where, maybe I just had one the other day for our own property, but it was like, hey, plumber number 1, they actually broke the tool to fix something. So then it was like, okay, on Sunday you're calling all these different ones and you're a little bit at the mercy of who's going to be able to actually take care of you. But other than that, I mean, it's really, you have your supplies, and those are pretty reasonable, and it's just making sure that, hey, everything's in good functioning order. But, yeah, the biggest expense is going to be if something breaks down.
One thing I'll say on that, he's right. He's absolutely right. And one thing you want to do is if you have an owner's cabinet or closet, utilize that, right? And don't keep out too many supplies because people steal supplies. People steal toilet paper, paper towels, soap. So the big mistake I made is I put out, this was just my properties, years ago, was I'd put out 2 things of soap or 2. They have to have the amount of supplies they need for the stay, but don't overdo it because people will take those. So that takes away from your bottom line because that's stolen supplies. But also just ordering supplies in general. You can go on Amazon and buy these things in bulk, and there's some really good products. Even some of the white labeled Amazon Confederated products, whatever. Some of those are actually really good products, right? You don't need to buy the most you want good products, but you don't need the premium toilet paper or premium, so you have to be honest, what kind of supplies you want. They have to be functional and good, but just don't break the bank on those. So that's one thing about supplies I would add.
Was there a question over here?
So for the 2 speakers that are managing their own, do you have your own website as well as Airbnb and VRBO and allow direct bookings?
Yes, we do have our own website, and we take direct bookings as well. So yeah, I would recommend that everybody, even if you just have one property, get a website up for that one property. I know some people will actually do a website for each property, and it won't be like a group of properties. We group ours together on ours, though.
So yeah, we do have our own website. It's kind of in development still, but we will have direct bookings there. For the ones I have personal, I have a direct booking link to do that as well on mine. So it's just like Stark Vacation Rentals, so they can go there and they can book direct if they want to. I do prefer. There are fees involved, obviously, when you do VRB and Airbnb, but I like working with them because they offer liability coverage. They offer screening. So screening is important, right? You don't know who these people are at all, right? So if you are having guests and you don't know who they are and they're booking direct, you should run you can run a forewarn if you have to, but that's pretty extreme, right? So you have. But Airbnb and VRBO verify the driver's license, and there's a lot of different ways they do it, right? I feel safer booking through them than I do direct booking, but we do direct booking still because you can save money doing it. So it's kind of like, what do you weigh the risk to the saving the costs, and so that's how we do it.
And depending on what property management software you use, usually they'll have some good tools for direct booking. We're using OwnerRez, and they make it super easy. Create a quote, and then you can email it to them, and then they basically fill out the information right there, and then they use a third-party payment processor. So even if you don't necessarily have a website up, doesn't mean that it's not relatively easy to get some direct bookings too.
One other thing too, you can now, if you're renting to friends and family, I would still do a rental agreement with them when they go, because I know you trust your friends, but do you know your friends' friends? So to have them sign a rental agreement. So we have a short-term rental kind of agreement lease, because I have long-term rental properties too, but it's a little bit different for that. So I always make people sign that, even that's safe to do that.
All right, we can do one or two more questions. Anybody else have a question?
What strategies have you guys used to get guests to leave reviews? I have 5-star reviews, but it seems like the percentage of people leaving reviews is not what it should be, which I don't understand
I
why.
can take that one. Yeah, so I haven't mentioned it yet, but previously, before I joined Vacasa, my background, I started a short-term rental management company and had about 5 listings. One of the things that me and my business partner at the time put into place was basically with Airbnb, I don't know if this has changed, but if you weren't over 4.6 star rating or something, they could suspend your account. So a 4-star review for a normal person is, a 4-star hotel is pretty good. I would send an actual message after they left and explain the review system on Airbnb, and basically explain that a 4-star review is actually a bad review, and that reviews do drive our business. And we found a pretty heavy uptick in 5-star reviews. And then the things that those people did have to maybe offer us as a word of advice, they would just message us instead of throwing it in the 4-star.
Yeah, along those lines, same thing. And then, so we'll send it at, I think, 5 o'clock on day of checkout, saying, hey, hope you enjoyed your stay. We always aim for 5-star experience. Would love to hear some feedback so that we can incorporate it for the next guest. And then if they don't leave one within the next 3 days, I'll review them, which will send them a trigger from Airbnb saying, hey, Tony reviewed you. So that's just one little touch point of, okay, now that they reviewed me, maybe I should do that, and maybe they might be interested in seeing the review. But then if they don't do it for 4 more days, then I specifically reach out to them and say, hey, I just want to make sure you did enjoy your stay, and ask them one more time to review. So there's 3 different touch points that we'll do to try to get that review. I would say it's probably at 70% is what we get for reviews. So I don't know where yours are at in terms of that, but.
So what we do is, obviously, to get a good review, you have to have a nice place, and it has to be clean, and you have to communicate well with people, right? So in offering all the personal suggestions and giving them local guides and all that stuff adds up. It's all part of it, right? And being accommodating, and people make requests can I come in an hour early, stay an hour later, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? So what we do is as long as the cleaning crew gives me the thumbs up that the place is good, then I'll leave a review immediately, because they just left, they're thinking about it, they know what it was like, they remember it, they're excited about it if they had a good experience, hopefully, and most of them do, right? So we leave a review once I get the check from the cleaning person. We leave a review immediately, and we found out that doing it quickly and right away and asking them, say, thanks for staying, we'll come again, here's some other properties, I just left you a 5-star review. Reviews are absolutely important to us, good reviews, and so they usually write it right away. Most people do. And so for us, it's free, doing it right away. It helps a lot.
All right, last chance to ask the last question.
So I'm just curious, with the full management style, how much can I expect to pay for that? I mean, I'm a self-manager, so I always want to know how do I make it easier.
Yeah. So basically how the process works is we'd have a general conversation about your property, and then either we would set up a time to view the property together, or I would get a collection of photos from you. And then basically based off of how we project that property would perform, of course, based off of our other homes that we already manage as well as other competitors. We basically set our management fee, which is a percentage of the nightly rate that guests are paying. We set it based off of like the margin that we feel, we could make on the property. So if your home is making a lot more, of course we can make the management fee lower and negotiate that down. But just to answer your question, in general, like an average across the state of Michigan for like full service property management, you're probably somewhere around like 25 to 33%.
Would you guys agree with that range?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
You sure? Okay. All right. Okay. I've seen it as high as 50 in Mackinac Island, believe it or not, which is absurd. Like, I would never pay that. But we charge 15% to co-host, and we charge 20 to fully host. So that's what we do, and that's straightforward as is. That's what we charge.
Same with ours. We do 10% for the co-hosting one that we currently do, and that one again is in Florida, and just based on what they're looking for, we're doing 10% on that one, and then 20% for property management here in Southwest Michigan.
All right, last question for me. What's the future of short-term rental management? What's on the horizon?
You got the best insight, probably. Big team.
Yeah, right.
Big team.
Is it AI? Is it robot?
I think just kind of go back to the conversation that we were having earlier around differentiating yourself. I think right now, like, there's a lot of investors that are getting excited about how much you can make on a home that, someone's only staying in for a weekend type of thing. I talk to a lot of people every week that are calling me and, hey, I got this house under contract here in South Haven. Like, we're going to throw a couple beds in it and a couch and it should be good to go. Like, how much can we make on it, There's really nothing there that's driving people to come to it, or nothing that's really bringing them outside of the realm of their own home back home besides the lake that's down the road. So I really think that if you differentiate and design these places the way they should be and do provide a good amenity stack and make people really feel like the place they're going to is the vacation, and then the place around them is just an added experience beyond that, I think that's where it's going. I think that some of these cookie cutter homes are going to start struggling. And as far as management goes, I think there's always going to be the need for management. I mean, short-term rentals, home sharing, it's not going anywhere. But I think from a clientele perspective and actually wanting to stay up to peak on performance, it's going to come down to differentiation.
Yeah, I mean, the future, you did say AI, Chat GPT, that's an amazing tool. So it does seem like at a certain point we'll be able to feed a system that will be able to auto-generate some responses based on what the guest asks. So there's a little bit of that already out there. So that's probably one big thing. But I think the future, it's like, this is all the competition. Everybody's competing for those bookings, right? So you're going to see the level of the property. You look at Orlando, Florida, probably the biggest vacation rental market, in the United States, and people have to keep upgrading their property to stand out. And I don't think it's quite like that here in Southwest Michigan or in Michigan in general. So I think what you're going to see is the level of properties that become available to compete for that. They'll just keep going up. And I think that's a good thing. I think we should be taking it up a notch and increasing the quality and experience for the guests. So looking forward to it.
So I would say the future's bright, right? But it depends on the city, right? So Grand Rapids won't allow you to rent a property in downtown Grand Rapids unless it's you live there and it's a room and you're in there while they're there, basically, right? So they restricted anything that's outside the city limits. So it'll grow, but only grow as much as a municipality will allow it, right? So that's the problem. That's like, what can you do and what can't you do? I've gone down to City Hall a dozen times to talk to them about this, and what can we do? Can we buy a commercial property and turn it into a 10-building Airbnb? And they're like, well, not without a boutique hotel license that allows that. It's zoning issues, So I think it's going to continue to grow. And if you think about it, right, let's say you go into Traverse City for a weekend with your family, right? Are you going to want to stay in a hotel with two beds and one bath for $500 a night? Or are you going to stay in a lake house that has 8 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms for the same price, with a kitchen and on the water, So I mean, people are realizing that you stay in like somebody's house and somebody's Airbnb. It's just a more personal, better experience. And I think more people are realizing that you'll see more and more advertisements from Airbnb and VRBO all the time, and they're very emotional, like family kind of advertisements. Are like you'll have these moments by the lake, and so you've seen those, right? Probably they're all over the place. I mean, if you search anything on short-term rental, your phone immediately targets you with a billion ads. We know that. So, but I think the future's bright, and I love this investment type, and I do preach for a mixed investment bag. If you have different properties like long-term and short-term, if you have the ability to mix that and have that portfolio that's safe and good. But I do think my favorite investment is short-term rentals. It's a little bit riskier, but not only can you make a lot of money off of them, and the margins are really good, but the ROI is really good. But you can use them for yourself, and then when you're not using them, you can home exchange them. So I mean, it's a no-brainer, for me. But the only problem is I don't think it's going to be as saturated as you think, because it's harder to get into that space, because you usually have to put 20% down, right? And because it's a short-term, those kind of risks are higher because it's a short-term rental risk. Insurance is more money. The acquisition cost is higher. You have to put more money down, and and you have to furnish it, right? So if it's a big place, that's like 20-30 grand. So before you know it, you're 70-80 grand into a property where you could get a long-term rental one for way less for down, right? Because there's different financing options. So, however, the ROI is so much better on those. As long as you do it right and you're in a good area, it makes sense.
All right, we're going to wrap it up here. I got a couple of things to say. Brenden, you just touched on this. Grand Rapids, Traverse City, there's a lot of rules and restrictions out there in different cities and municipalities. We're going to be talking about that at 12:30 today. So be back in this room. We're going to have another panel talking about lobbying and grassroots efforts on behalf of short-term rentals. But now we have an hour for lunch and for you to visit all of our vendors and exhibitors out in the hallway. Make sure you stop in and talk to every single one of them, because they are here for you, and it's because of them that we're able to do this. So thank you for being here. Let's hear it for our panel. I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.